Hello, hello, and welcome to Shit You Wished You Would Have Learned in Grad School. I'm your host, Jennifer Agee, licensed clinical professional counselor. And here with me today is Jill Johnson. She is a licensed clinical social worker. She is also an author, a public speaker, and a grief expert. And I am so glad that you're here today.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be invited.
One of the reasons I really wanted you to come on the podcast is I have come to understand throughout my career how many different areas grief touches. It's not just even the obvious ones that you think of, like the death of a loved one or a pet or the loss of a relationship. It affects so many different areas of life. And I realized I got zero training really in this at all in grad school. And
Hmm.
so I wanted you to come on and help all of us understand better what we as therapists in the room with clients need to know.
I appreciate that. My own daughter actually is working on her hours now. She's going to be an LMFT in California. She's got her master's. And I kept saying, now, when you get into the class on grief, you have got to make sure mommy gets to come because
Yes.
they're going to do it wrong. And she never told me that she took it. When I found out, I'm like, and why didn't you invite me? And she said, because I knew what you would say. And you would tell my professors they were wrong. And I wanted to pass, mom. So, right, grad school does not cover grief. And when it does now, the new staff we're hiring, Central Counseling Services in Riverside, Marietta, we have 35 therapists now. And most of them have reported that that was an elective. So
Oh,
it's
wow.
not even touched in a lot of programs these days, which is really distressing to me
I
because
agree.
we can't be good therapists for our clients if we don't know how to spot grief and loss,
Mhm.
to name it. And if we don't know in terms of losses from death, what the dying process looks like.
Yes.
Because otherwise you re-traumatize your client because when they're talking about what they've seen and heard, they are holding on to the trauma of what they did not understand
Hmm.
in front of a therapist who also doesn't understand. So all they can do is agree with them. And
Right.
it's not fair to the client. And it's not fair to us because we need to be better therapists.
Hmm.
We need to offer everything we can to our clients.
Yeah, I agree.
And if you're diving deep into grief, you need to make sure you dive deep into training because I don't do couples for that reason. I'm a horrible couples counselor. I will cause you grief because you will be divorced if you see me for couples counseling. But what we don't talk about is how grief affects us across the lifespan. It
Right.
affects tinies. It's that, we have that whole thing where they go to school for the first time and everyone's taking pictures and their child is crying. Their child is grieving
Mm.
and that parent is grieving.
Yes.
And it's a normal and natural loss. It's that loss of that first insular time,
Hmm.
right? My daughter just returned to work 6 weeks after giving birth. She works from home, but she had to give up her full-time time with her baby. And her husband's covering so that she can work. That's grief.
Hmm. Those transitions around the event.
All the things when you move, when you
Hmm.
leave for college, when you come home from college for the summer, when you change jobs, when, of course, retirement we do think of as a loss these days, but
Right.
we don't name it so much. It's supposed to be this really cool, oh yeah, go do anything you want, except that next Monday morning there's this vacuum, which is quite similar to the vacuum when you wake up in the morning and your partner is not there.
Hmm.
We know that divorce is a loss. We know separation is a loss, but COVID has taught us lots about losses.
Absolutely. And one of the things you're tapping into is what what I had to learn the hard way as a therapist is that to be effective in the room with the client, I need to understand that within grief it is the death of a thousand tiny dreams, right? These
Right.
visions of what was going to be, because we all forecast into the future of what we think it's going to be like or predict what we hope it will be like. And that's a part of the grief process that often doesn't get attention either.
Right. It's all the shattered dreams and hopes, all
Right.
the changes, right? We interview people and ask them, where do you want to be in 10 years? Which is a really unfair thing to do, I just have to say.
Mm-hmm.
Because if someone had asked me that 10 years ago, I wouldn't have said, I'm planning to be on my third marriage after having been widowed twice. I would never have said that, right?
Yeah.
And that's part of what we need to recognize, as well as therapists, that when we are asking clients about their history, we need to hear with our second and third ear the losses that they don't even identify as losses.
How do we do that?
You have to do an intake in a way that is not all about, did you fill out the form?
Okay.
That's my number one. We need to make sure our intake documents have space that encourage that discussion, not just to check the box. And I know as a client, I get irritated when I have to do intake paperwork on myself or somebody in my family. But if it asks something like, have there been any recent shifts in your life? Any major changes in your life? That encourages loss disclosure when someone's thinking of it as a change, not a loss.
That's a great idea to even add to your intake, because I'm thinking about mine now. And, I have the general, have there been recent changes, but maybe wording it in a different way that invites more conversation could be helpful.
Right. And we have that thing, check your marital status. And we've got lots of marital statuses now, right?
Right.
Widowed and widower only covers one loss.
Good point.
There are lots of us who've had multiple.
So how do you address that? What do you
I
have?
actually do a genogram in my first appointment, unless I know someone's a grief client. Now, people track me down to do grief work because
Sure.
I'm sort of all over the internet and my story's out there and my books are out there, so you can find me. So I have people come in to see me just because they know I've been widowed several times. But otherwise, I do a genogram because it helps me build my understanding of who this client is. And then I do energy circles as to who's in their inner circle and who's in the outer.
Mm-hmm.
And that helps me find out who in their relationship history has moved from center to out or out to in, because those indicate losses too.
Yeah. You brought up COVID earlier, and the losses, and I actually met you in Hawaii at a conference.
Right.
And you were so generous to just welcome me. And I knew nobody at that conference, and you were very kind to just welcome me in at your table, and were very gracious, and I appreciate that. But
We had fun.
yeah, we did have fun. But one of the exercises that you had us do, and this was during COVID, was we formed a large circle and we said the name of someone that we lost during that time. And my grandmother had just passed. I was with her in hospice and helped her in that transition. And I thought I was doing really well. And then when we had that exercise, I couldn't even say her name. The words were just stuck in my throat and it would not come. And it helped me tap into the fact that there's a part of me that is still grieving that. And it was a great exercise to do. And I love the experiential aspect of that to help tap into it. Are there things that you think therapists could be aware of that they could help clients tap into that in creative ways?
There are so many ways. And when I was working in my office, which I haven't because I had COVID, and now I'm a long hauler and it's a little dangerous. But one of the things that we did was we had our dogs in the office, and that prompted people to talk about their pets and pets who had died.
Okay.
And that's a natural entry into grief, whether it's someone's lizard or their, pet spider or their dog or cat or whatever. We play the movie Coco. And now we're going to start, when it's adults only, we're going to start playing the Queen Bees, which is the funniest movie about grief and post-loss life. If you haven't seen it, you have to.
I have not seen that.
It's hysterical. And I connected with the screenwriter. I emailed him and said, we need to talk. I want to know what your background is that you were able to do grief so well in this movie. So we had a good chat. But I also use the holidays. For instance, we just got through Easter, Passover, and Ramadan all at the same time this year, right? Those bring grief forward. Whether or not someone has been 20 years or 2 months, that the spring kind of renewal holidays or events also engender grief because that person's not with us. And for folks who are grieving, there's a sense of, oh, I'm supposed to be over it now. And so I tap into that with, you're not over them. You're never going to be over them, but let's find a way to honor them in this. Let's make them part of it. If we're doing spring renewal, let's plant a tree or a flower in their name.
Right.
Mother's Day is kind of one of the most horrific events in the world for people who've had losses,
Right.
whether it's been infertility or child loss or mom loss or grandma loss. All the maternal related losses come up.
Mhm.
And so I hammer on Mother's Day with my clients because everyone's had a mom loss of some kind.
Right.
It might be the mom that they never had because that mom wasn't capable of being that mom. You don't know what you're going to tap into, but it gets it there. And then we do ways to honor it. I have candles that I keep. And I have candles on my desk at home now, and I will light a candle with a client. For kiddos, we do artwork.
Okay.
For Christmas and Hanukkah, we make ornaments or decorate a dreidel with the person's name. For Thanksgiving, I really do like it when people do the Thanksgiving tablecloth. Have you ever done that?
No, what is that?
That's where you it's cool because we get to play and we're adults, right? We don't get to
I
play
know.
very often. We're stressed about the meal. You get a plain old white tablecloth that you are going to keep, but that you can tolerate writing on, and a bunch of Sharpies or permanent fabric markers.
Okay.
And then everybody makes a hand outline of their hand where they're sitting and puts their name and the year. And then for folks that you've lost that year, you put them in clouds or some other kind of, some people made turkeys, right? You put
Okay.
those in the center of the table and the year that they died. And then as you add more, so the next year you get the tablecloth out and everybody who's sitting wherever puts their new handprint on and the new losses. And it just builds out your family history while you're sitting there, and it makes them present for that meal.
That is a great idea. Very
Isn't that
creative.
cool?
And I agree with you. We do not play enough as adults, not
We
nearly.
don't. And we need to be able to do that. So I like that idea. I like the ornaments. My tree has a ton of ornaments. And because we rescue senior poodles at our house,
Mhm.
we have paw prints all over our tree because every time we get one of ours cremated, they send you the little ceramic paw print.
Yeah.
So we decorate those and those go on the tree for Christmas. Yeah, we look like a memorial tree at our house, but that's what you get when you're our age and you've rescued seniors and been widowed twice. You get lots of memorials on the tree.
And you're a grief expert, so it makes perfect sense.
It does. It does. And our kids are used to that stuff. So I like to tap into what is there already, the natural, organic part of it. And I also like to have my clients and others that I meet share something that made their loved one who died or who was missing happy or made them smile so that you can bring that smile back. Because lots of
Good point.
times we treat grievers like they're supposed to be sad all the time, and they're not. That's not human.
No, it's not realistic. I would love to know what your idea or what your thoughts are around this idea of people who are stuck in their grief. I
That
want to
goes
know what
along
your
with
thoughts are.
our new diagnosis that we just got, which I'm currently at the Association for Death Education and Counseling meeting in St. Louis. And they're actually doing a review with the people who helped write the new diagnosis for grief, for the
Okay.
prolonged grief disorder, which is only a small percentage. So let me caution folks right now, because now that we've got this new disorder, everyone's going to apply it to every grief. It's not.
Okay.
It's meant only for those who are really, really, really stuck,
Okay.
who have defined themselves in their world around their loss and can't see the rest of the world. They can only see their loss. That's less than 4% of the entire population on the planet. Everyone else is befuddling through the initial parts of the shock and the adjustment and the acclimation and the working through. For the ones who are really stuck, those folks need a therapist who really knows what they're doing with prolonged grief and who can help ferret out prior losses that have taught that client that grief is where you stay, not that grief is where you do the work.
Okay, that's a good distinction.
Yeah, because we don't want folks, I don't want folks to be Eeyore, right?
No.
Poor
Yeah.
Eeyore, he never smiles. Every day is just kind of a ho-hum day, right? And I'm glad everybody in Pooh Land is supportive of him and not picking on him. But folks who are grieving should be able to finish up the things that they didn't get to say, apologize for, thank someone for, the plans, to talk through the plans that they are not going to do, because that causes guilt, and the plans that they are going to do, which also causes guilt.
Right.
They need to talk through the guilt they have for being alive, the guilt for any decisions they made or participated in or supported someone in. Guilt and anxiety are the two most common emotions for grievers. Not sadness.
Okay. Guilt and anxiety.
Guilt and anxiety. I did something wrong. I'm doing this wrong. I should have made them go to chemo. I should have let them quit chemo. I shouldn't have placed them. I am glad I placed them, and now I feel guilty. There's 1,000 ways we can feel guilty. I shouldn't have let him get behind the wheel of the car. I shouldn't have said you need a second job. All the things that can lead to a death or a
Right.
loss. That's the guilt part, right? And
How do
all
you
that
start?
needs to be said.
I agree. How do you start to shift a client from that narrative of in of blame and over responsibility, guilt, anxiety? What are some things that you do to help shift that narrative?
My first narrative that I want in their head, my
Mhm.
clients are funny. They'll sometimes say, I always have to think WWJD. What would Jill do? Right? Or WWJS. What would Jill say? And what Jill says is, in the moment that someone was ill or dying, this is for an illness death, you did the very best you could with the information you had in that time, and you did it out of love.
Mhm.
And that is the most any of us could ask for our loved ones to do for us. And anything that you didn't know because you weren't the doctor,
Right.
or even if you were the doctor, but you're not supposed to be your loved one's doctor, that's not yours to hold on to.
Mhm.
You did the best you could with the information you had in that moment in time and out of love.
You're really tapping into forgiveness.
Yep. Self-forgiveness and boundaries, because
Okay.
grievers constantly get rolled over with the boundaries. And that's
But
one of the things that grief therapists need to talk to them about.
okay, tell me a little bit more about how that shows up.
Someone walks into my office and says, I'm here because my sister-in-law said I haven't been angry yet. And that's number 3 on the list of stages. And I'm doing it wrong. And I'm never going to be over this because I haven't been angry. And I don't want to be angry. I'm not angry. I was okay with the fact that he died.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's not be angry. It's not an assigned task. You don't have, the stages belong to anticipatory grief, not post-loss grief. And you're not doing it wrong. Grievers are told to do it faster, to do it slower, to smile more, to smile less, to not make any changes for a year. That was written into every grief curriculum 30 plus years ago. And it's still there, and we have no research that supports it.
Oh,
None.
wow. Okay.
That's not evidence-based. But that's the way we've always done it. We've always had stages, and we've always had, don't make any changes for a year. If you are a young widow with 2 small kids and you can't afford that house anymore, you're going to make changes. But then we're going to
Absolutely.
make you feel guilty for it.
Mm-hmm. I'll tell you though, I have been guilty of saying that. Don't make any major changes for a
Changes for
year.
you because it's tradition.
That's right. Yeah. It
There's
is tradition.
nothing. There's
Mm-hmm.
nothing that supports it. I used to say it. I was the psychosocial director for a very large hospice. We had a census of 600 patients daily. We covered 3,000 square miles, and I went from social worker to in charge of all the psychosocial staff eventually. That was in our curriculum. We bought it from a big name dude in grief who no longer says it himself, but has never apologized for saying it.
Sure.
So I think we need to make sure that we are not reinforcing any of the old myths, and that we are telling our grief clients, you get to make any decision you need to, and I'm going to support you. And if it doesn't work out, I'm here to support you too. That
Absolutely.
gives them space. If they want to take their niece to Disney 2 weeks after the funeral, and everyone else is saying, Disney, you're supposed to, have your torn clothing and No, if you want to go to Disney, go to Disney.
Mhm.
Go to the beach, go anywhere that fits the place that you are emotionally right now.
Mhm.
But the people around them, particularly if someone's had a long illness death or they've been isolated at a death, like COVID has isolated so many people, even if it's cancer or heart attacks or whatever, we couldn't go and do that scoop up and that grief
Mhm.
hug. Grief hugs, by the way, last 45 seconds and you don't pat, you hold. That's
Okay,
a
no
grief hug.
padding, we're holding. Got it.
45 seconds.
45. Mhm.
Right? And then when you're going to release, you squeeze the arms a little bit. That gives the person warning you're going to let go.
Okay.
It makes a huge difference. Try it with someone.
I will. I
It,
absolutely will.
it's an awesome kind of a hug. So we see people violating the boundaries and they do it out of the goodness of their hearts. You know, they plan the funeral because mom has lost a child.
Mm.
Well, then that funeral doesn't reflect that mom and her child. It reflects what other people think it should be. And they're doing it out of the goodness of their heart. But all of a sudden she's been railroaded and is not having You Are My Sunshine playing at the opening, right?
Right.
We have folks who have miscarriages who are told, you should be glad you didn't get further in your pregnancy.
Ouch.
You get to have more kids. Well, that's a big assumption.
Right.
And the minute someone who wants a child is expecting, that child has a full identity and a full life plan. They
Mhm.
just don't know it yet. And then when you lose that pregnancy, you've had the loss of a child. But you have to go back to work the next day after your D&C because, we don't have bereavement leave for pregnancy loss.
Right. It's just not recognized.
And the
And
partner gets nothing.
wow. Well, one of the things you're bringing up is prompting my thoughts around the idea of what other people think your grief is supposed to look like.
Oh, absolutely. Everybody's got a rule. And they're all different and they're all wrong. Because the rule
Uh-huh.
is that loss for that griever in that moment in time.
Mhm. Well, and we've all experienced grief to some extent by being humans in this world and
Right.
making it this far. And I know I've been out and, for example, after my grandmother's leaving hospice and she had passed and I had to go to the grocery store because I'd been at hospice. There were things I needed. And I felt like there should be a sign on my head that said, I'm really, really hurting. My face is
Leave me
just,
alone.
I'm not trying to be an a-hole. I'm hurting. Leave me alone. Right. And
Right.
then other times where you belly laugh and you're like, should I be belly laughing because they just died? Like, is
Yes, you
that
should.
wrong? Right. The
Yes, you
shifting.
should. It's good
Hmm.
for your brain.
Yeah.
Some of the Victorian traditions were marvelous. The wearing the black armband, or there
Hmm.
was a whole series of grief jewelry that
Oh,
went from the first day to the end of the second year.
okay.
Some people follow the Jewish traditions with the rip piece of clothing that they wear, like a black ribbon sort of a thing. Those were wonderful because it really did tell people, right now I'm having a tough time. You put the
Mhm.
black crepe on the door. If you're sitting Shiva, then you cover the mirrors, right? Those traditions are wonderful for honoring that someone's probably not in a great space.
Yes.
But conversely, they also prevent some of the joy. That's why
Mm,
poor Queen Victoria had to go to her estate in the country so she could find joy again because she couldn't do it publicly.
right. You're not
She wasn't
allowed.
allowed. Yeah. And then her kids destroyed every shred of evidence of her second husband, got rid of all of it. They missed one statue in the garden.
Oh, wow.
And then she tricked them out. She wrote all of her journals in Arabic so they couldn't read them.
That's hilarious.
They were just found a few years ago. Yeah. So
That's
even she knew that she was the monarch and she spoke for God in her country and she wasn't allowed to grieve the way she wanted to.
hmm
So for what I see as a therapist is we're not telling our kids they are kids in school, no matter how old they are. We're not
yes.
telling each other grievers get to have the full spectrum of emotion.
Hmm.
And if they come in one session with you, they laugh, they cry, they yell, they throw a pillow, you've done your job,
Right.
right? The other thing we don't talk about with grievers is those who've lost an intimate partner. We don't talk about the loss of intimacy
That
at
is a
all.
great point because you're used to having someone hold your hand. You're used to having sexual intimacy. You're used to all
Right.
of these things hopefully consistently,
Right?
and then it's just gone.
Poof.
Yeah.
Yeah, you get out of the shower and you're used to someone standing there, and you get out of the shower the first time and realize I'm never going to be naked in front of them again. They're not here anymore.
Mhm.
There are a million micro losses with loss of intimacy,
Yeah.
and therapists are hugely uncomfortable with anything related to sexuality. No matter how much we deny it, it's very true. I did research on it and I've read what little research there is. We need to really be aware of that, and we need to bring it up because our grief clients will never bring it up.
Oh,
And parents who've lost a child will never bring up being afraid to have sex again in case they have another child.
that is an excellent point I had not thought of. For us to bring that up and bring that into the room, the
Give them
intimate
permission.
aspect. Hmm.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I
we
hadn't
need
thought
it.
about the loss of a child and the fear of having sex and
Mhm.
maybe having another child.
Right. What happens if we get pregnant again?
Yeah.
Not only what happens if we don't, what happens if we do?
Yeah. Very
Right.
complicated feelings, I'm sure. How do you
Yeah.
help your clients move through that?
For the ones who've lost an intimate partner, which is
Hmm.
separate and apart from the loss of a child,
Right.
I bring it up. I just say, tell me about what was your sex life like? How did you guys know you fell in love? I use
Mm.
humor. I smile when I do it.
Hmm.
And my grievers to date have never said anything other than, oh my God, I'm so glad you brought that up. I can't talk about this with anyone. Right?
What a relief to have a space to be able
Huge.
to have that conversation.
Right. And then they'll say things a few weeks later into, oh my God, what happens when I die? All of our stuff we have under the bed. Or in the
That
drawer.
bedside
I
table.
gotta find someone to get rid of my stuff before my kids find it, right?
Sure.
Those are conversations they would never have with you if you don't bring it up first because they think you're judging them.
Mm.
And a lot of therapists do. When I went to see a therapist one time after my second wife died, first thing she said was, well, why would you think you should get married again?
What?
And why didn't you get her health checked before you got married?
What are you
What,
buying, a
like a
horse? You
horse and
gotta,
check the
yes.
teeth, right? What is that?
Right.
That's not an uncommon response from therapists.
It's kind of a jackhole response, though, to be quite honest. But I think it probably comes from a place of not knowing what to say in that space, which is why I wanted to have you on, because I want therapists to start to get the language to be able to not do more harm when
Right.
their clients bring those things into the room.
And also to not do harm by not bringing it up yourself.
Mm, good
We
point.
don't bring up, and this goes for anyone who works for hospice. We have a lot of therapists who work hospice and then have private practices. When you're dealing with a couple who are facing a loss, make
Mm,
sure you're asking about their intimacy level. Make sure that you are fostering it instead of turning that spouse into a caregiver the whole time.
good point.
And then help them make some body memories so that when that person has died, they can still remember actively holding their loved one after their death. And then, as therapists with grievers, we need to be able to talk about that loss. Now, for folks who've lost children, we need to bring up how long did you have to try before you got pregnant? Because that's going to tell you if they're going to try again,
Right.
if it's going to be a problem. Was this as an assisted pregnancy? So now you're looking at they've spent $25,000,
Not
right?
infertility treatments.
Mm-hmm. And are they having doctors say you shouldn't try again right now because you're too stressed? But they've taken so long to try to get to this point that they're literally running out of time.
Hmm.
There's a lot of nuance that goes with child loss that's way more than just the loss of a child. And it's something that as therapists, we're not comfortable with. Therapists with young children don't want to imagine their kids dying.
Nobody does. Sure.
Right. I don't want to think about my grandchildren dying. That's just not something any of us really want to think about, but it's the reality of life.
Sure.
When my grandchildren got pet rabbits, the first thing I said to my daughter was, are you crazy? Rabbits and small children, not a great combination usually. You all work. And sure enough, both rabbits ended up dying.
Mhm.
And so those rabbits got buried in our front yard, and we had a little funeral, and we did all the things. And now they go by the yard and talk to the rabbits, even though I've sold the house already. Like, we have to be able to talk about this stuff so that we can help even our littles
Yeah.
figure out that death is normal and loss is normal, that they're sad that their best friend just moved across the country, that military kids are allowed to be sad when they get moved or a parent gets deployed.
Mhm.
Got a lot of deployments going on right now, and a
Or not even
lot.
having a traditional, whatever traditional means, childhood of growing up in a neighborhood and knowing the same kids. And I mean, there's
Right.
grief in that. My husband's a military brat,
So is my
and
wife. Yeah.
there's grief, in that as well. Okay, so where do you recommend therapists start to become more competent to be able to speak about grief with their clients and again be helpers and not inadvertent harmers? What can we do to start?
Stop using stages.
Okay,
Abandon those unless you're working with someone who is dying, not someone who's already had a loss.
great takeaway.
Educate yourself about what they mean.
Okay.
Educate yourself about what the dying process looks like.
Mhm.
Because if you haven't seen it, you don't know. And if you have seen it and you didn't know, you're still not good with it, probably.
And hospice
Um,
has great little books.
they do. They do. My book has it in there too. I'll even send someone a handout if they want it. I've got a handout
Okay.
on what the dying process looks like. And I send
We
it to
can include
anybody who
it.
asks.
We can include it as a link if you want.
Sure, I'll send it to you and you can put it on as a link. That stuff is important.
Mhm.
Get to know what funerals cost and what funerals are like so that you can join someone, and if they need your help in guiding them through that. A lot of grief and loss is basic stuff of life. Are they paying their bills, or is their brain gone to mush? So they
Right.
are not thinking about it and adding extra stress. And then look around. There are lots of different schools of thought for grief. I
Mhm.
am very solution focused, unabashedly solution focused. So
Yeah.
my process is different from some of the others. Find one that fits for you.
Mhm.
This is not a 4 hour Pessy, I've got it all thing.
Right.
That's, you need to know more and do some reading. My favorite new book right now is by Steve Later. I don't know if you know him. He's the rabbi of the largest, oldest congregation in LA.
Okay.
And he's got a book out called The Beauty of What Remains. And his new book, which every therapist needs to read, is coming out in June. He and I talk occasionally. And
Mhm.
it's basically about ethical will writing, which
Oh,
is what somebody writes in giving permissions and hopes and dreams for those who will follow them after their death. It's
preparing to die is important even if you're not sick.
it's a great book, and it's a great book for fostering conversations. And it
Mhm.
should be, I think, on every therapist shelf because it actually will give you prompts to talk about with people. You need to educate yourself about hospice
Mhm.
and hospice in your area because every area does hospice differently, and there are good and bad hospices.
Right.
And you kind of need to keep track of who they are. And you
Okay.
need to know which grief support groups are good and bad in your area. And I did say bad because there are some that do damage. And if
Okay.
you've got a non-religious client and you're sending them to a religious one, you're
Not a
going
good.
to do harm,
Oh. Mhm.
right? And groups change too when their leaders change. So if it was a good group last year, it may not be a great group this year. Go
Good point.
online and look around in the online groups.
Mhm.
Figure out which ones are toxic this week and which ones are not. Because there are groups that their whole goal is to keep people grieving.
Oh yeah.
And to me, that's toxic.
Right.
You want them in the groups that say, this really sucks, but we're going to get you to the other side. And you're going to be like some of the other people in the group who have now restarted their lives.
Mhm.
So make sure that you've got those and that you're checking on them. It gives you the opportunity to use them as well if you need them,
Okay.
right? When you lose a client, make sure you honor that loss.
Mm.
Make sure you take some time out for that. Don't just gloss over it. And look for loss in every age and for every developmental stage. And reference back the other losses your client can tell you. If you do a timeline of a client's life,
Mhm.
you'll find out where the losses are. Because you say put on there all the times you moved. All of a sudden you found out you got a military brat who lived on 17 bases,
Right.
right?
Hmm.
And some military kids are really good at keeping up. And some military kids like close off that part of life and now there's a new life. And there's a whole bunch of unmentioned losses there.
Yeah.
All right.
I do that. I learned through play therapy to do that on Story on a Stick.
Mm-hmm.
Where you
It's a
have them
great technique.
enrage the playful mind. Jill, thank you so much for coming on. I could talk to you for hours because there is so much more to learn, but I think Jill's given us a great place to start now to jump off and do our own work in starting to educate ourselves better so that we can become better clinicians in the room for our grieving clients. How can people connect with you, Jill?
It feels weird as a social worker to say I'm a .com, but jilljohnsonyoung.com has courses that I teach that are always there. They're online. It also, though, more importantly, has a resource section in the back, all free. And
No.
you can find references about every kind of loss plus dementia there, and books that I suggest that you read, and kid books I suggest for you, those sorts of things that folks are always looking for.
Okay.
And then you can also find me at the rebelliouswidow.com, which is my most recent book, which talks about the preparation for dying for someone in your life, as well as the dying process, what hospice should and shouldn't be, and the grief process in a solution-focused manner. That has free downloads for grief that you can use without reading the book. So
Okay.
any therapist can go on there and grab those downloads.
Mhm.
And that's why I put them there. I also do a Facebook Live on Friday called the Friday Grief Chat. And that's on the Facebook page, Humor, Grace, and Grief, with a friend of mine, Deb, who's a hospice nurse. And we just chat about all things grief. And we have authors and different grief people on there. We have people who come in and talk about after death contact, which is really important,
Mhm.
and something that therapists need to educate themselves about. So, and you can find me at centralcounselingservices.com. That is my agency. We're in 3 areas of Southern California and probably heading to the desert soon.
Oh,
So,
wow.
yeah, my partner Sherry Shockey Pope and I have worked really hard, and we've got some great team members there. If you're not in California, we can't do services for you, but we can provide you with resources.
And that is huge. Knowing who to ask is so important. Thank you again for being on. If you would like to connect with us more on the Shit You Wish You Learned in Grad School podcast, you can go to counselingcommunity.com or find us on Facebook, Counseling Community, and connect with us there. I hope you have a wonderful day, and thank you again, Jill.
Thank you.